How you doing, Try Life on Family? This is your host, Maurice Philogene. Woo! There's a good one today. I got a chance to spend some time with Chris Hutchins. Chris Hutchins is the host of the award-winning podcast, All the Hacks. He's an amazing guy. He's a life hacker. He's a financial optimizer. His journey has been nothing short of phenomenal from my perspective because I am a lifestyle designer. Chris goes into topics like travel hacking, life optimization in really, really in depth on his podcast. And that's what attracted me to him, especially his episode with Bill Perkins, episode 91 of All the Hacks podcast, relative to life fulfillment. It really changed my life. But when you meet Chris, he is the founder of the company Grove that was acquired by Wealthfront. He's also one of the co-founders of the company Milk that was acquired by Google. Just like me, he was a management consultant for a while. He was also an investment banker. Where his journey has led him is to, I want to live life my way. He started All the Hacks because he loves life optimization, money optimization. How can I live more meaningful for less? And the podcast has stuck. And it's monetized enough that he can do it full-time with his amazing wife and his two kids. Just like me, he's a world traveler. I think he's been to 70 plus countries at this point, to my 90. We talked a lot about optimizing finances, how you get there, the thought process, his thought process, which was leveraging mutual funds, passive mutual funds, index funds, I should say, where my journey led me down the path of real estate. We also talked a lot about shifting to this whole notion of life fulfillment versus optimizing for net worth or optimizing for money. Money's just a tool, man, and it should be used to design life. And he has a very interesting perspective on it, which is fantastic. And he also went into some of the hacks that he talks about relative to travel, like reaching out to hotels, how to minimize costs with Airbnbs, how to get around the world. It's just a wide-ranging conversation. There's very few people that I have felt the need to track down. Chris was one of them. So if you are truly interested in the Try Life On movement, lifestyle design in and of itself, time freedom, financial freedom, being geographically free around the world, not only do I recommend this episode with Chris Hutchins, I also recommend you check out his podcast, All the Hacks. Man, we got to share. All the Hacks is the best. I'm learning from it, and I learned from him on this episode, and I know you will too. So I hope you enjoy this very wide-ranging conversation with my man, Chris Hutchins. So I found you because I was listening to Tim, and for some reason, I never watch his stuff on YouTube. I'm just always the audio guy. And for some reason, I happened to plug up YouTube one day, and it was your episode with him doing the podcast stuff, which led me to All the Hacks. And I myself am a bit of a life hacker as well. That's why I sent you that diatribe about all that crap that I've done in my life. I say that I've lived 5 lifetimes in one, and I'm only 48, and I got a lot more to go. So I've been listening to All the Hacks since, and man, is my listenership and then the people that I coach in lifestyle design leveraging all that. So I'll kind of express that as we go, but that's why I wanted to get you, because you are living your life in a very unique way, optimizing it, knowing that we got 28,000 days in a lifetime to be here. I got like, I don't know, 11,000 left if I'm lucky, right? If I make it the whole way. So why not optimize it or use it to the extent possible to do the things you want? And then when I kind of got into your bio, life hacker, financial optimizer, and all the things that you've done, I'm like, I got to see more of what this man is saying, and also share the stuff that I've done with you so you can leverage it as well, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so it's good. And then one more premise, when I coach people, so my tagline is Try Life On. When I coach people, it is around how to build a lifestyle you don't need a vacation from, leveraging time freedom, financial freedom, geographic freedom, all the location freedom stuff you do with points and things of that nature, which I'm sure we'll talk about, executing your purpose, which is why I became a police officer at the same time I was a management consultant, which is crazy, and then building awesome relationships with people who've done stuff in greater droves than you have. So I tracked you down because the first thing is financial freedom. financial optimizer, and I know you started Grove and that got bought up by Wealthfront, but I just wanted to understand where your love of figuring out net worth and balance sheets and cash flow and all that stuff came from.
I would love to figure it out too. I'll give you my best answer.
My man.
I mean, I always loved math. Like,
Yeah.
I remember there was this game, Challenge 24, where there was a card and there were four numbers, and you had to, like, basically sat in a group, you'd throw the card out, and whoever could figure out how to add, subtract, divide, or multiply those numbers to get to the sum, the 24. So,
Yeah.
it's like 2 times 12 minus 3 plus 3 or something,
Yeah.
would win. Like, I love that in elementary school. Like, just, I've always been a nerd about math.
Yeah.
And so I know that when it comes to spreadsheets and tracking stuff, like, that's just, I don't know, maybe DNA. Like, I don't know where it came from.
Right.
When it comes to all the other optimizing, I think, I give credit to my parents. I didn't grow, I kind of grew up upper middle class, but my parents didn't give me everything, right? They weren't like, here's a credit card, go have whatever you want. They were like, oh, if you want to get something, you got to figure out a way to get it. You could work a job, you could, do something, you could save, whatever it is. And I guess I was surrounded by a lot of people in, an affluent suburb, and I went to boarding school who had more resources from their family in whatever way. And so I just had to kind of get creative. So when I was in high school, everyone was always ordering pizza. Keep in mind, I was at boarding school. They were ordering pizza at night. And I was like, well, I want pizza. But, like, I just didn't have my parents' credit card. So I couldn't just order pizza like they could.
Yeah.
So one day I was like, well, what if I order pizza, sell 6 slices, I eat 2, sell the 6 for the cost of the whole pizza? And so I kind of realized, well, if you approach any problem from the angle of, is there a way I can get the really great outcome without the sacrifice by finding some other tool or system to make it work? And so I think the theme of my version of optimizing isn't, well, let's find a way to cut what I eat down to just beans and rice to save money. It's, how do I take the vacation? How do I go on the experience? How do I have the meal? How do I do all the things that I want to do, but at a lower cost, but without as much sacrifice? There's probably some mental sacrifice from the time and the energy it takes to optimize, but I'm still ultimately going on the epic vacation, just not spending what a lot of other people are.
When you think about financial optimization, is it a part of a financial freedom journey, or is it just optimizing in and of itself, just to kind of beat the system, if you will?
No, I mean, it definitely, like you, I was a management consultant, and I didn't think that I was fulfilled. I was an investment banker, and similarly, I was like, gosh, neither of these careers, which, are like, people really strive to get jobs in these industries.
Yeah.
And I was like, this can't be it. Like, there has to be more to life than this job. And so I think through a series of jobs, realizing that I didn't love any of them, I didn't find what, my purpose. I didn't find a thing that made work feel like play, and vice versa. I was like, man, I really need to save money, because I can't spend 40 years of my life doing this thing I don't love. And so to me, the answer was, well, if I could aggressively save as much as possible doing a job that maybe I don't love but pays well, then I can have the financial freedom to not be tied to work.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to sacrifice my 20s and 30s saving, not getting to experience life at that age, right? Yeah. I didn't have kids in my 20s. If I didn't travel, I'd be looking back right now thinking, well, when am I ever going to do that? Like, my wife and I quit our jobs and backpacked for 7 months. Like, the idea of backpacking and staying in $1 hostels in India at, almost 40 with 2 kids, it's not even on the radar. That experience will never happen for the rest of my life. And I'm really glad I had it. And so I think for me, it was like, I really want to save money aggressively so I can reach, financial freedom, so I can have the flexibility to not rely on an employment I don't love.
Yep.
But I don't want to sacrifice everything to do it, because those are some amazing years of your life where there are experiences you can only have during certain kind of windows of age and experience. And I didn't want to miss out on them.
And I'm glad that you say that. I wish I would have known people. I say, man, in my financial freedom journey, which was from like 2002 to 2014, the thing that I was missing was Chris. The thing that I was missing was there was no LinkedIn to find each other or social media to find each other easily, because I had the same thought process of, I'm not going to stay here forever. This doesn't feel right. And the way that I did it was to start buying real estate when I was really young, because I ran into a book. It made sense. I bought a property. It appreciated. It's like, man, that's somebody's salary. And I did a bunch more of those things. But I think where people get hung up, like they fundamentally understand that if we save money, or I call it storing money, but if I store money and I go invest it in something, chances are I will be better off in the future. But the mental leap, or the jump to doing something, is really difficult for people. They don't know what to do. I don't know if it was when you were an investment banker or when you were a management consultant, but if you started saving money, how did you even know what to do with it? Or what did you do with it, just so people have an idea?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always kind of been a little bit of a researcher. So I was like, okay, let's figure it out. Let's go read the books. Let's go figure it out. I didn't know the right answer at the time. Even people who make great financial decisions make great financial mistakes. And
Yes.
my parents helped me put all kinds of great money into a Roth IRA when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know what that was, but I was like, gosh, no penalties to take it out. Let's take it all out. I can use it. So, I didn't make the best decisions always ever. But the general principle was take all the money that I'm saving and put it in like low cost, diverse index funds. That was it. Like my strategy was take every money, and I treated every dollar I earned as savings. And so I had this mindset shift that I think was different from a lot of people, who was like, okay, I have money, I spend it, and whatever's left, I save. And in my mind,
Yes.
the mindset was I have money, I'm saving all of it. But if I want, I can use some of it to spend, and that'll just mean less savings. And so every time I was thinking, what do I want to do? It was, would this money be better off growing so that in the future I can have the freedom to do what I want, or would it be better off spent on a vacation or a thing? And I didn't go through this every time. I wasn't at the grocery store like, do I want these $3 to compound, or do I want this, gallon of milk?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that, but that was my kind of general outlook, was I want to save money so that I can, have flexibility in the future. And, I didn't do anything fancy. Like I wasn't buying real estate. I was just putting money in index funds, and that's it.
I tell people, so I keep saying I'm 48, but I tell people I'm proud of my 23-year-old self, because just like you, I had the thought process and I'm like, get paid, store money away, then you can use whatever is left to go live. And I think you've been to 70 countries now. I'm up to like 90 countries now. I was unwilling to wait until I was some kind of an adult to just get out there and live life and stuff like that. How long did you stay in the actual work world, if you will, in the W-2 world with the investment banking and MC work?
So I lasted probably a year each in investment banking and management consulting.
Not very long.
So not very long.
Yeah.
But mostly because I got laid off in 2008 from the management consulting firm. So they helped me make the jump unknowingly. Okay. But I didn't immediately think, oh, great, now I didn't have the money. So it took a series of, I went and worked at a few different tech companies in the Bay Area. I helped start a company. That company got acquired by Google, where it, both the acquisitions on my resume were like, we want your team to come work here. Can you shut your company down? And like, we'll pay back your investors and we'll give you a good salary and some stock. But, nobody was depositing millions of dollars into my bank account, or even $1 million in my bank account. So I worked at Google for 4 years, left to try starting another company. Wealthfront, same outcome. Can you come work on this problem we have, and we'll take over your lease and that kind of stuff. But I didn't get a payday, right? I got like a salary.
Massive payday.
Not even a minor one. I just got a salary and some stock at Wealthfront. And then in December last year, 2022, I finally said, wow, this podcast I've started, which I love and doesn't feel like work and feels like it's doing some good in the world, and I enjoy it, is finally enough that I think I can, with my savings, take a bet on that being the full-time thing. And so it's been about 9-10 months now. So I've been on the W-2 kind of roller coaster until last year, but within that roller coaster was starting a company where I'm running it, but then going back to work for someone else, starting another company, going back to work for something else. So it's not a perfect trajectory or story, but it was a lot of different things.
It was a lot of different things, yeah. But within it seems like you have the muscle of, I'll just think about it, get enough information, I'll go. I'll just take a shot at it.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. Well, that takes me to all the hacks, which I think is phenomenal. Dude, I thought that I knew a lot of stuff. I, I, I thought that I knew a lot of stuff being in different industries, and I'm in the military as a federal agent. I was a police officer, MC, exec. I speak 4 languages. I do travel hack a bit, but I didn't realize, and I do things like AKA 4-hour work week. Like I virtualized my mail. The business I created, I wanted it to be such that I just had a laptop, I had a cell phone, and I could pick it up at any time and go disappear somewhere in the world and still be able to service my investors, my customers, and stuff like that. So I've always thought about this lifestyle design thing. I credit the 4-hour work week for helping me hone it, but the muscle was within me. But you have taken kind of life optimization or life hacking to a whole new level on your podcast, All the Hacks. Where did the thought come from to start it? And then how are you researching so much information? Like it's not a little bit, man. It is a massive amount that you seem to be able to coalesce in a way that people can consume it. How are you doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something I love to do. My wife sometimes thinks I'm crazy. She's like, why are you spending so much time looking at every insurance policy we can get? Like, what is the absolute floor of the best rate we'd get? Is it really, maybe we're going to save $400 over the course of the year. Why would you spend 30 hours doing this? And I like to say that, oh, well, now it's because I have this audience and I'm saving them money also. But I was doing the same thing before.
For yourself,
and it is just like the way I'm wired. It's like I want to understand how the system works. I want to figure out how to break it down. I want to figure out how to get to the point that I know all the levers and all the options and make the most optimal decision. And I get such deep satisfaction of knowing that I've like arrived at a great outcome because of this research. And I think in my previous pre-podcast life, it was just time that you could argue wasn't well spent. Now, I think the current highest savings from just that insurance episode. So that I mean, to be clear,
I know the episode.
That's the highest. Was I think over $15,000 a year. Was someone wrote in and said, "Hey, I'm now saving over $15,000 a year." So that's episode 104, and I just went deep on all the insurance policies. Now I get this great value of, okay, I'm spending 20 hours. I might only save $500, but I'm hearing people tell me they've saved thousands of dollars a year in perpetuity, and the impact that has on their lives is amazing. So now the time I'm still doing the same thing. It just feels like it's a lot more worth it.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but do it. It's just how I'm wired. So I'm working on this episode right now on, how I track all of our spending. And I use an app called Copilot. And I think it's hands down, in my personal opinion, the best. But in that episode, I went through every single category of expense and talked about how I think about optimizing each one. And it wasn't just, oh, wow, maybe I haven't thought about it enough. Let's go down a rabbit hole and see if there are other ways to do this. So I just can't help myself but digging and researching everywhere I go.
Yeah, man, it's something that you love, clearly.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work at all.
Then you've hit the holy grail. then to me, you've hit the holy grail if it doesn't feel like work and you're able to generate revenue from it and you're impacting people. I can tell you from my perspective, look, I want to have a life that's mobile. I want to be out in the world. I split my time between Washington, D.C. and what I call my Mediterranean neighborhood, which is Cyprus and Lebanon. I'm always there, and I'm building some real estate in Cyprus and stuff. One of the things that I got from you was to reach, I don't stay at hotels very often, but I do from time to time, to reach out to the hotel. Like even if you book them on third party, I now find their email address, or I will just call them and say, what's the email address so I can email the general manager. I'll email the general manager or email the reception or whatever. And I'll do exactly what you said, which is, hey, I'll be there in 3 weeks. I'm so excited. Can't wait. This is my 5th time to the area. I've been to your hotel twice. And you are not bullshitting. I've gotten bottles of champagne, free dinner waiting for me, upgrade to suites, related to it. One hotel local in Beirut had passes to be at the lounge at the Rafik Hariri airport. So they kept that at the desk for me in case I didn't have access to the lounge. It's just like these little things. And I say that travel hacking, from my perspective, is traveling in the most amount of comfort for the least amount of pay, is the way that I look at it. And you give some awesome tips. What would be, like, give me maybe one or two other things that may not be apparent that would help folks who are listening.
I'll give a fun one just because I think it's a little bit out of the box and good for people who travel internationally. So you gave one of my favorites, right? If you're staying at a hotel, always reach out. Magic kind of happens. Maybe not 100%, but certainly more than 20%. If you are, maybe you have a family and you're looking to stay at a house, you want to rent a house. I've found that if you search on Airbnb, you can find homes, VRBO, but in every country, people that own these homes either have their own little mini agency that you might not obviously find because they don't have a huge web presence, or maybe they even have a website for the house. And in a perfect world, you could book directly or more directly with the owner of the house because you're going to save money. Everyone in the middle is not getting their cut. So if you take whatever you think the like most obvious photo is from the Airbnb or the VRBO listing, and you go to Google Images and you search for that photo, you basically upload that photo. Google will say, hey, here's all the places on the internet we found that photo. And so multiple times, we did this in Paris once, we did this in Mexico once, we found a place we wanted to book, searched for the image on Google Images, and we were able to find another place to book that same exact property for between 10 and 25% less.
Because it was a local.
In one case, it was like a French rental website. And in the other case, it was like a website for the house in Mexico.
Damn.
So great. Now, I will say the obvious risk is Airbnb has some really great protections. If something gets canceled, they will help you. Usually we've had a good experience. But, you know, especially if you book it through another agency that represents a lot of houses, but at a lower price, why not? And so I'm a big fan. You can also negotiate on Airbnb. Even if you want to book through Airbnb, like you can send someone a note and say, hey, we really like your property. We're looking to stay during this window. And it's a little more expensive than we wanted. If you could do it for this price, we'd book right now.
That's awesome.
And I'd say I have a friend who has a couple Airbnbs, and he says like 50% of the people don't negotiate and 50% do. And about 50% of the time he accepts the negotiation. So
he does. It's just a matter of asking.
Our Airbnbs. We
got to ask. We're just so used to not asking for services. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm curious if the one thing I was looking for on your podcast, and I think I've maybe listened to like 30 episodes. I'm working my way, but is more the thought process on people hacks. And let me give you an example of what I mean. So when I travel, I tell people one of the purposes of travel is not necessarily for you to go see things as much as it is for you to build relationships with people. Because if you build relationships with people, which will end up being meaningful, then chances are the next time you invest in that relationship, come back or whatever, you're eating dinner at their house, you're learning about local culture, you're kicking it around. So I have this hack where I say, look, if you're going to get an Airbnb, an Uber, a local Uber, get the Uber driver's phone number and say to him or her, hey, instead of ordering you through Uber, why don't you be my driver for the week? I'll pay you a little bit more. And then you start learning a lot more about local culture, maybe even make a sound friend for a long time. But that person will inevitably link you to little nooks and crannies of the city that you've never seen, that aren't on websites and stuff like that. I'm wondering if on All the Hacks, if you talk a bit about kind of life hacks outside of getting there, but also like plugging into what the environment is.
Yeah, I can think of a few episodes. So I talked to Nomadic Matt, who's a blogger that's done a lot of traveling. I talked to Rolf Potts, who wrote a book called Vagabonding.
I know it very well. Yeah.
Excellent book. So we did a little bit in those episodes. Also, I talked to Brandon Presser and Sebastian Modoc, who are both travel journalists, about how they kind of deeply ingrain themselves in culture in new cities. And, similarly, one tactic is if you're going to go take a free walking tour And after the walking tour, ask the person leading the tour if you can go buy them lunch, or you can buy them a drink. Any tour you're on, that tour guide is a local that lives in that place. Ask them if you can take them out. Ask them if, you can invite their family to dinner. Just get to know someone in their experience, in their local area. There's lots of ways to do that.
You said, I'm going to put in notes. You said the Ralph Potts episode, Sebastian
Modoc, Brandon Presser, the first Brandon's been on the show 3 times, but the first time, and then Nomadic Matt, we talked about a little.
Nomadic Matt, cool. So are you guys still traveling? Are you and your wife traveling quite a bit still with the kids, or?
Yeah, so we have a 1 and a 3-year-old, which it puts a big spin on travel. We took both kids to London and Paris last year, which seemed, I think, aggressive. Yeah. I think we just had to reset our expectations. I would encourage people who are traveling with young children, go places where you either don't want to do a lot or where you've been before. Because one of the challenges, so Paris was great because we've been a couple times and there was no pressure to go race and see things. It was just about like living in the moment.
Family. Yeah.
But my wife had never been to London. And so there was a little bit of pressure of like, let's go see the things. You've never been here. And that was stressful. But we've done, more local trips like Hawaii and Mexico, which we've been to before. They're more about relaxing. It's less about rushing off to go see all the things.
Yep.
And those are great. So I think I'm going to deprioritize the adventure to a new place where we can try the foods and meet the locals and do the things, because it just feels a bit go, which is, it's just hard when your kids are still napping at the time, like 1 or 2 times, and the other 2 or 3 times. Like, it's just a lot of naps. And so, yeah, I think, but places and places you can relax are a much better destination.
What's your, not that it matters, but what's your country count now? I'm curious.
It's probably somewhere, I think you said 70. I think it's somewhere around 70, 60, 65, awesome. 70. I only know the count because my grandparents actually traveled a lot. And they, way before it was in vogue, early retirement, financial freedom. And they did it because my grandfather, served as a professor and a teacher for years. And they just decided when they were in their maybe mid 50s, they were going to move to a retirement community. And it seemed so silly. So they moved to like a place that had everything from you have a home in a neighborhood with like a central community center, all the way to assisted living to hospice care. Like, it was the full gamut. And so they lived in this retirement community for 40 years. And because they had traveled a bit, but because they had the flexibility in their lives, but they were still young enough, my grandfather, and mostly my grandfather, but also my grandmother, they started this tour agency, and they would just take all the people in their community on trips. And I remember at my grandfather's funeral, I was like, I'm very curious. I wrote this blog post. I'm happy to share a link to it about the lessons I learned from my grandfather. And one of them, it was like about travel, and I wanted to know how many countries they went to. So I made a list. They hit 53 countries, which, given the time of the world that they were alive, that's a lot. That's a very impressive feat. And so every year they would take 1 or 2 trips to Asia or to Europe, and take people from their community around. And talk about travel hacking. They never paid for their trips, because as the tour guides, they always got the airline to comp their flights, the hotels to comp their rooms. So they hit 53 countries around the world, and they did it without having to really spend anything. And because they were in this, they had a built-in network of people that wanted to go, who didn't know how to plan these trips themselves. And so I kind of inspired a little bit by them. And we're actually working on our first trip for All the Hacks listeners, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see if it evolves.
I might be there,
following in my grandparents' footsteps or not.
That's awesome. And I'm in the high 90s now, but I tell people, like, are you going to see every country in the world? I'm like, absolutely not. That's not the point. The point is just going out and meeting people and being fulfilled and all that type of stuff. The world has a lot to offer. which pivots me to the other reason why I was so intrigued to meet you, because of episode 91 with Bill Perkins.
Love it.
Man. So I have in my arsenal, I have 5 books that I've been reading for the past 15 years, 4 Hour Workweek being one of them, and then Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning being a second one. And then the other ones are real estate and finance related. And the reason I stuck with the same books for 5 years, I'm like, I can go chase the shiny ball, or I can reread these books so much that I become such an expert in them and I execute everything that they've told me. So those 5 books, I've done it. Parkinson's book, because I heard it on your podcast, is the first book that I'm adding to that list, because I am at I'm at the right chapter where it makes sense to optimize for life fulfillment versus like, let me just increase my balance sheet, or let me buy some more real estate, or let me do A, B, and C. And I found it pretty profound, your reaction to that when you had that episode with him. So I'm just curious, like, how have you taken in what he has told you? How have you kind of shifted your mindset? Because I know you were very much like net worth guy, or at least some of the research said net worth guy, let me build this, etc.
Yeah.
And then you started thinking more about the fulfillment side of it. I'm curious how it's all manifested for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife and I were always talking about like what our financial goals were. And after that episode and conversation, we were like, I don't know why we have a net worth goal. Like, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We have things we want to do with our life, and some of them take money, and we got to figure out, make sure we have enough money by the time we want to do them.
Yeah.
But it really forced us to say, when do we want to do them? And how do we want to do them? And what's important to us? And so it was funny, this trip we took with our kids to London and Paris happened about, I don't know, I almost think it was measured in hours. Maybe it was days from that interview, because we'd been talking about doing these things, and we'd always said, oh, well, it's not the right time because it's not the best deal for the flights. And I even asked Bill at the end of the episode, I said, hey, like, help me think through this. And he's like, you're optimizing for the best use of your points. You should be optimizing for taking the trip. And the moment we realized, oh, we're not optimizing for the right things. Like, if we think that what we really want to do right now is take a trip with our kids and take my wife to London in the winter because she loves Christmas and there's just such a holiday vibe, let's just do it. And yes, it might cost more than if we wait for the best deal. But like, what is all of this money for, if not for trying to have the experiences you want in life? And I realize I say that from a place of privilege. I have the money to take the trip. For some people, you're not there yet. And yes, you do need to save. But I think so often, a lot of the research he found was that people end up having more, they spend less in retirement than they thought, because, you think, oh, when I'm old, I'm retired, I'm gonna have all the time in the world, I'm going to go hike to Machu Picchu, and I'm going to go. Well, you're old. Like, your body can't handle all the things that you wanted to do. We took a great family vacation to Japan with my parents, my sister, both my sister and I's spouses. But my parents, the pace they wanted to see Japan was not the pace me and my sister wanted to see it. And that's fine. They had a wonderful trip. We had a wonderful trip. But I think we have these kind of outsized expectations of what's possible when we're retired. And if we wait until those days, it's going to be tough. And so, I don't know. It's just changed how we spend our money, how we think about what we prioritize. It's made it easier to spend money and not save for this like conceptual future where we don't even know what that is. I don't know. A lot of changes.
I think it's always good when you as a host understand how your episodes impact people. My goal prior to that episode, I had a good straight line path. So by the time I die, I would have 9 figures of net worth. That was my goal. And after that episode, when I heard him talk about optimizing for life fulfillment, and then people leave money on the table when they exit this beautiful world and all that type of stuff, I'm like, wait a minute, what am I actually doing? Because I could be taking some of those resources that I said that I'm going to leave here forever for them to grow, and use those resources now so my kids can experience stuff. I just came back from a trip to Lebanon with my 10-year-old, which is insane. Who's taking a 10-year-old to Lebanon? I did. For a week and a half. But now he speaks about it so fondly. He's like, when am I going to see the next country in the Mideast at? When are we going to go do that? It was such a breath of fresh air to hear that. Now I look at my balance sheet, and I've worked hard on it. So I can do whatever I want with it. But now I look at it, how do I apply this to life right now such that my family benefits? And the one thing that you actually got me to do, so just impact, I decided to buy a new home. I've never been interested in the bigger home ever. And let me tell you why you got me interested in it. Not because it was a bigger home, but it was because I wanted to now create an environment, Max Life Fulfillment, where my family and friends would come over, hang around the kitchen island, sit at the fire pit outside, sit in the hot tub together. I've never had it because everything that I was doing was let me save enough money and just go buy real estate over and over and over again to build my balance sheet. It's like, dude, no, build something so your kids remember what's going on now. So I've never bought a new car. I've never bought a new home. The home that I live in now, I was forced to buy it because the person I rented it from needed to sell it. But I finally bought my first new home, but with the specific intent of creating an environment so my family has a more fulfilling experience while they're here. And that came from that episode. So just so you know the impact that it has. And lastly on that, and then I'll give you a final thought. I love business. I don't think I'll ever stop business, but I told my business partners, my foot is now off the business gas. It's not on the brakes. It's just off the business gas, and I'm in neutral. So if somebody wants to pull me along into a real estate deal or something because they have something and I can help from a balance sheet perspective, I think that's wonderful. But I'm much more, what is the next experience that my kids can benefit from? How can I optimize it from a life hacking perspective? What can I do with it? So I think, I don't know how much feedback you get from all the hacks and what have you, and what you're kind of putting out there, but it does impact people, and it is changing a lot of people. So I want to give you that kudos.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. I mean, that's why we're doing these things, right? I assume the reason we're having this conversation is because you like to share stories and hope they inspire other people to change their lives. I like doing the same thing. My parents just did a similar thing, which at first glance I thought was crazy. They're going on a cruise with a bunch of friends and a lot of my dad's high school friends and their families. And they said, well, we upgraded to the corner suite on the cruise. And it was like 10 times the price. And I was like, what do you got? Like, this is not you. What are you guys doing? And they were like, we just figured that if we had the room with the bar and the living room and all the space, everyone would just be always hanging out here and we'd get to see everyone all the time. Otherwise, we'd have to plan activities and go things. Now we can just always just hang out with our friends. We just get to see everyone the whole trip all the time. And I was like, that sounds like a perfect way to spend your money. Like,
I love it.
What a great way to spend your money. It wasn't that they needed the opulence of a big room. They don't care about that. And honestly, if they didn't have friends on the cruise, they never would have done it. But because they knew all these people, they wanted to create a place like you did where people could gather and create meaningful experiences. So I don't know. That's this new mindset shift. So if people haven't heard Bill's book, read it, listen to it. I'll obviously recommend my episode, but he's done some other podcasts. But I don't know. It just really makes you rethink how you want to spend your money and what you want to do with your time, and in a really exciting way.
It's good. And again, like you got to work hard for it and get to a place, but there's still this level of we chase stuff. It's just what's been ingrained in us forever, where we should be trying to enjoy life as much as possible. What is going to happen? What do you want to do with all the hacks? How do you want to? I'm just curious where you're going with it and how you want to grow it. Me as a new podcaster, I'm kind of paying attention because you're 2.5 years ahead of me, right? And you are clearly trying to impact people, but you will make money from it as you go. But I love the fact that it's clear that you are trying to impact people because you do so much research. Where is the destination for you on that, if any?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's an unlimited number of things to talk about in life and relationships and work and business and travel. I'm going to not run out of content. Yeah. And I don't really know if I have a goal for where I want to take it, other than I keep meeting people who have just only recently found it and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found this. I haven't found this sooner. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly there's more people to impact. Yep. So how do I go after a larger audience so people can find it? How do I continue? I have a really high standard for partners. So when it comes to sponsors and making a business out of it, I'd say almost every one of the brands I work with is a brand that I previously used. I wore the clothes, I ate the food, whatever it is, I already used. And I reached out to them and said, hey, so take Copilot as an example, right?
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
spending tracking app. I'd been using it for over a year and I thought it was amazing. Finally, I got introduced to someone that worked there and I was like, I love your product. There's a lot of companies that could sponsor this podcast that do this thing, but I only want to work with you guys because you guys are the product I use. And how natural would it be for me to talk about your product? The goal is to always have all of our sponsors be that.
Yep.
There will maybe be some exceptions if a really reputable large brand that I believe makes a product that's very good for lots of people, but just doesn't fit into my world right now, could fit in. But for the most part, the brands I want to work with are large, established, awesome brands and brands I use. Those are the two categories. And so if I can stick to that and keep delivering to the audience things that enrich their lives, maybe that evolves from just being content to being products or services. I launched a membership a few months back, which is very early. And the goal is, can I go create relationships with brands and services and offer even better deals for members that brands aren't necessarily willing to give to the whole world, but are willing to give to a small group of people? Can I build a membership that's like what AARP kind of does for, the older generation of retired people, aggregating, discounts and offers, but for a younger generation of people who are more excited about experiences and travel and those kind of things.
I love it.
I talked about taking trips. There's, I'm working on building a whole course on points and miles. Like there's all kinds of stuff that I want to do.
There's no end to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But taking it slow to make sure we, the same amount of research I put into one episode, just imagine how much research I'd put into launching a course. It's going to take time.
Well, I look forward to it. I'm part of your membership, so I'll be there when it comes out. So every podcast has some kind of final question or something. I got one, but it's a really simple one. And you have, look, the people who are listening to this, man, and the reason why I put Try Life On together and I coach under that tagline and I'm writing a book and there's some TV shows potentially coming out under that tagline. When I was in MC, and I stayed at my consulting firm for 25 years, I never left. I just always found I protected time. I didn't really go to networking events and stuff like that. Somehow became a street cop and tried life on my way. I was still traveling, hacking, but not to your level, but I was hacking my way through travel. There are ways to do other things. And I'm looking at your journey. You were in investment banking, MC world. Then you started a couple companies. They sold out. Then you worked for Google, some other places. Then a whole pivot into the podcasting world where you sit now with your beautiful family. Like you clearly have been trying life on your way. And a lot of other people want to do that, but a little bit of fear, a little bit of consternation, a little bit of friends, coworkers, peers, neighbors telling them it can't be done. What would be like one piece, any piece of advice you could give on like, look, man, just go try life on, but while you're doing it, consider the following, because clearly you are on this journey. And I think folks would benefit from any advice you have to give them so they can get on theirs.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you had asked me what my calling would be 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it never would have been what I'm doing now. So first off, like if you don't know what it is, that's okay. You might not. And by the time this comes out, I will have done an episode with Sunil Gupta, who wrote a book called Everyday Dharma, which is kind of all about finding your inner and outer success. I think the book actually came out today.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. So you might not know what it is you want to do, but you might be able to find both pieces of it in what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And so a cool example that I'll share is, and we go into more depth on this episode with Sunil, but a nurse who loved writing, and she didn't find her nurse job as fulfilling as she thought it would be because she felt like her calling was as a writer. But one part of the job of being a nurse is writing up the description of the patient and the situation. And she just decided that when she wrote that description for, the report or whatever document it is, she would just put like real effort into it. And it ended up being something that got passed around the hospital because her stories were so amazing, even though it was part of the job. And that took her job from something that wasn't fulfilling to like incredibly fulfilling, even
Oh,
though it was only 1% of the job. 99% of what she was doing was not writing. But
mhm.
so I would say a few things. One, look all over, figure out what things you love and find ways to experiment with them. I think the traditional advice is start with just a side hustle, but I'll say you might be able to find fulfillment in the thing you love at your job.
Yep, I
I
agree.
know it didn't work at Wealthfront, but I proposed to them. I said, "Hey, could I start a podcast at Wealthfront?" And it wasn't something that they wanted to prioritize, but there are other companies where if you wanted to start a newsletter, you could do it at your company.
That's
And
it.
maybe that's not your full-time job, but maybe it helps you get that fulfillment. And so that's one. And then the other, you did this, I did this. You don't have to commit all in from the get-go, right? This
Hmm.
podcast existed, or my podcast existed, for over a year before it was my full-time thing. And
Oh,
when I first committed, I only committed to doing 8 episodes.
hmm.
And it was a commitment to myself, but I said, I'm going to do 8. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to call it season 1. And we didn't renew for season 2.
I
But I
love it.
wanted to see. And
Yep.
so I think for anyone, it's find the things that spark your joy, your curiosity, see if you can infuse them into your work life, see if you can infuse them into a side project. But don't feel like you have to jump into the deep end and go all in on this idea right away from the get-go.
I think that's a phenomenal piece of advice because that it overwhelms people big time. And I'm doing this podcast now. I think this is episode 23, 24, something like that. I'm just still feeling it out, if it makes sense, just from my perspective. But it seems to. But I love that advice, man. I think your journey is awesome. I think how you're impacting people in a different way is awesome. And I love the fact that you've shifted your mindset a bit towards the life fulfillment stuff. We can make money and we will, but we have to approach this life in a meaningful way. And it's clear to me that you're doing that, and that you would take a moment out of your day to come impact the people that listen to me, man. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it. You are impacting me with your podcast. I've told so many people about it. I think they're sick of hearing from me on it, but when I find good shit, I tell people it's good shit. So your stuff is good shit, man. I really appreciate you, and thanks for taking some time with me.
Yeah, there is no higher praise than sharing that. So, know that if you're listening and you like this show, go share it to your friends and help Maurice out as well, because that's all any podcaster can ask for.
That's it. That's it. All right, brother. I'll see you on the next one, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.